October 30th, 2004, a troubled girl and her gang of deadly teenagers prowl the streets searching for their next prey.
These kids had a lot of built-up rage and anger, and they had no one but themselves.
Like the group of misfits in the critically acclaimed movie A Clockwork Orange, no one is safe from the gang's maniacal attacks.
A Clockwork Orange introduces us to Alex and his very disturbed friends who go around beating on innocent people, robbing, raping, and murdering.
The gang of teens also leave a trail of victims in their wake.
They want to cause as much human damage to these innocent victims as they can.
When life imitates A Clockwork Orange, no one is safe.
This story, by far, is one of the most shocking copycat crimes.
14-year-old Chelsea O'Mahony is not your average teenage girl.
She tried to make it seem as though she was just an average run-of-the-mill, safe to be around kind of girl, but that was very far from the reality.
Hey, watch.
This was a young girl who had no limitations. She wanted to engage in violent interactions, and nothing was off limits.
But everyone has a mean streak in them. And one of the most talked about movies of all time, A Clockwork Orange, shows that anyone is capable of committing a crime.
A Clockwork Orange could be described as a film that follows a young gang that basically walk the streets at night looking to beat up and rob anyone that they come across. It's fun to them.
Through Chelsea's gang of friends, her dark side is exposed.
She wasn't really looked at as a girl. She was really looked at as a part of this group, one of the guys, and her aggressive behaviors emulated all the other young males in the group.
I've kicked him.
This seemingly innocent girl has some deep, dark secrets.
Chelsea's best-kept secret was the journal where she put all her thoughts and experiences and wrote them down. She didn't tell anybody about that journal.
But although Chelsea goes to great lengths to hide her evil deeds, it's only a matter of time before the entire country discovers just how vile she really is.
This is a young girl who's very influenced by her environment and by her peers. If she hadn't met those boys, her life might have been entirely different.
For as long as Chelsea can remember, she searched for a family to call her own.
Chelsea's mother and father were both drug addicts, and that is how she was conceived, by two drugged-up people. Before she was born, her father had run off, so he wasn't part of her life.
And her life was the life of a neglected child. Nobody really cared about her.
At 3 years old, little Chelsea was seen running in the streets in the middle of the night.
A child knows when they're not wanted. A child forgotten, a child abandoned, a child neglected. And you can't do that to a child without that child suffering.
Local authorities tried to work with Chelsea's mother, but after several years of no progress, she is deemed unfit to care for Chelsea. Eventually, Chelsea is taken in by her aunt and uncle.
At first, living with her aunt and uncle was very good for her. And it seemed like she was going to make an impossibly horrible start in life turn into something good.
She seemed to get some stability, and it was working for a time.
But Chelsea's second chance at a happy home is short-lived.
Despite everyone's efforts to give her the best possible life, This child was scarred by early experiences. And so she would act out a lot, and she would have emotional outbursts. They tried to get her help. They tried to help her themselves. They just could not cope with it after a while.
Abandoned again, Chelsea is sent to live with a different relative, Aunt June.
Once again, Chelsea gets shipped off to another family member. Aunt June feels that she can give her niece Chelsea something that will help to make Chelsea's life better.
Aunt June hoped she could change Chelsea, stop the temper tantrums, stop the acting out. She wanted to give her stability and support because Chelsea so desperately needed that.
Although Aunt June has good intentions, the neighborhood she lives in is far from the ideal place to raise a child.
Aunt June's neighborhood is in an area that has really gone downhill. There are roving bands of teenage thugs about. It's not a very safe place to be.
This exposed Chelsea to a world that she was not prepared to enter into because of her young age. But yet, that's where she fell in, and she fell in with the really bad kids.
On the streets of Aunt June's neighborhood is a group of teenage boys who come from troubled backgrounds. Just like Chelsea.
Reese Sargent is the head of a gang that calls themselves Sargent's Crew. Reese Sargent had a difficult road in life. He had learning disabilities, he had a speech impediment. He is known to be aggressive and difficult, and he has a handful of criminal convictions.
Another member of Reese's crew is David Blenman.
David was abandoned very young by his parents. He was raised by his grandmother and his aunt, just like Chelsea. David had a few run-ins with the law even as a child.
And then there's Darren Case.
Darren Case lived with his wheelchair-bound grandparents in a house nearby. He really had nothing left in his life except this gang.
Apart, Sargent's crew is a collection of misfits. But together, they're formidable.
Hey, what's up?
Hi.
Hi. Nice to meet you. What you up to?
Just taking the trash out.
None of these kids are close to their parents.
I'm Reese. Darren. David.
These youth who are wayward, who are adrift, who are violent, don't have a strong and moral influence.
Chelsea is intrigued by the gang of teens.
When you're troubled and you're rejected and you come from abuse, it's hard for you to relate to people who don't come from that background. It really is. So you seek others like yourself that you can relate to.
Nice to meet you.
One member of the gang catches Chelsea's eye.
Chelsea and David eventually start dating. They are attracted to each other, and Chelsea really is drawn to David. She'd found everything she thought she wanted.
Eventually, the group welcomes Chelsea as their newest member.
Previous to being in the group, Chelsea was just alone, really based on her background, alone, angry, resentful. Now she's in a group where everyone has the same feelings. They're no longer individuals that are angry, they're now in a group that are angry. It's kind of become them against the world.
But just when things seem to be going her way, everything comes crashing down.
Aunt June took ill, and she was unable to care for Chelsea with her own health in the balance. So sadly, Chelsea didn't have anywhere to go, and she wound up being released into foster care.
She gets sent to a foster care family. Yeah, and she doesn't know this family. They're complete strangers.
This foster family lives on the opposite side of town, and for Chelsea, that's just unbearable. It takes her away from her gang.
Chelsea is desperate to get back to her friends.
Chelsea knows that her new foster parents wouldn't tolerate it if she was out all night with her gang.
So Chelsea comes up with a lie. She tells her foster family she's going to spend the night at a friend's house. But a friendly Friday night sleepover is the last thing on Chelsea's mind.
So Chelsea thinks she's gotten over on everybody. She's not going to any sleepover. She's going to go back to Sergeant's crew. And she's going to run riot with the boys.
And what Chelsea and her crew plan on doing at night, away from their caretakers, seems to be pulled from one of the most controversial films of all time, A Clockwork Orange.
In the movie Clockwork Orange, the Droogs were a small gang of guys who wore special outfits to go out and commit violence just for violence sake.
The Droogs are a gang of 4 kids, all boys, and they're led by Alex. Their parents are peripheral at best. They don't know what their kids are doing, where their kids are, and they certainly have no idea that their children are violent and dangerous criminals, much like this crew here.
Off-screen, as seen in the movie, Sergeant's crew bond over their shared misfortune.
Chelsea felt like she found what she'd been looking for years when she found this group of friends. They gave her a sense of belonging. She felt like they would always have her back no matter what happened.
In A Clockwork Orange, the Droogs have a distinct uniform they wear while causing trouble around town.
I think that their look is very rebellious. White suspenders, white shirt, white pants, black boots, black bowler hat, a black ring around the eye, and then an old-fashioned sports cup worn outside their outfit. And the fact that they're all wearing this very specific outfit makes them stand out as a gang.
Chelsea's gang also adopt their own look.
They want people to feel threatened by them. So they start wearing dark clothes and dark hoodies, not just to blend into the night, but to strike terror.
The most important thing about the dark hoodie, though, is that it allowed these kids to obscure their faces.
In A Clockwork Orange, Alex and his gang are nothing without each other. And in real life, once Chelsea is back with Sergeant's crew, the real terror can begin.
They decided it was time to take it up a notch. Now it was time to start committing acts of violence and give people a reason to be afraid.
14-year-old Chelsea O'Mahony is part of a neighborhood gang of petty thieves. And their mission in life is seemingly inspired by a film. In the critically acclaimed film A Clockwork Orange, a gang of misfits and exiles also band together with one mission in mind.
They are young men who go about their city terrorizing people at night, robbing and brutalizing innocent people.
Now Chelsea and her gang, Sergeant's crew, wish to do the same.
Chelsea found her place in this makeshift family. She was very happy to be part of this group. And because of that, she had no interest in leaving or going anywhere. She'd found everything she thought she wanted.
Besides Chelsea, the other members include Reese, and his friends David and Darren.
The crew connects to each other because they've all had screwed up childhoods. They are all looking for a place to belong.
For Chelsea and the group, their life had been in conflict and in emotional pain almost all their lives. Life had really been pretty awful, and so you had a group that was pretty angry.
Chelsea, along with Sargent's crew, begin to commit petty crimes together in A Clockwork Orange. The gang's only motivation for inflicting unspeakable acts on their fellow citizens is they enjoy it.
They beat up and raped and tortured multiple people in the film. They enjoy what we watch them do to people.
In the movie, the gang adopts their very own language.
In A Clockwork Orange, the Droogs have a very specific way of speaking. There is a mixture of slang and other languages and then words that were just made up specifically for the film. They wanted to build a whole language and slang for these characters to use.
Chelsea's gang created their own phraseology and language around the stuff they were doing to make cute phrases for criminal activity. They started saying all-nighter to mean a robbery spree.
Hey, watch.
They call robbing people ramping.
The slang words are a clever way to hide their latest activity. It parallels the film A Clockwork Orange.
By using the slang, it also hides what they're doing. So they can speak about the crimes they're committing and be overheard, and people won't know what they're talking about.
Chelsea feels empowered by violence, like Alex in A Clockwork Orange.
They kept getting away with this week after week. And then slowly but surely, they started to increase. Till one night, it just all broke loose.
The idea to escalate their crimes is brought up during their weekly Friday night hangouts.
Chelsea and her gang hangs out at Darren's house. At first, these are just a bunch of kids sitting around being bored together and not really doing anything. But then they learn of this activity called happy slapping.
Happy slapping became kind of a fad when kids would approach an unsuspecting individual and slap them. They record it because that's one way of then placing it on the internet and then gaining fame and notoriety.
Chelsea likes the attention happy slapping garners on the internet.
Happy slapping started out as something kind of innocuous, where you'd go up and lightly slap somebody. It quickly turned into a very violent type of thing, where people would punch others in the face just to get their reaction.
The vast majority of people thought it was horrible, disgusting, shameful, and humiliating. But Chelsea and the group enjoyed it because they were, a pretty angry group of teenagers, and they felt it was very funny and empowering.
Chelsea and her gang, Sargent's crew, decide they're going to make their own series of happy slapping videos and post them on the internet.
The strength in numbers absolutely had to play a role in why these kids were willing to try this. One kid, one random person to be slapped, probably not. Even two of them, but this is a group of 4. So they had to feel as though they were just untouchable. Everybody else was just a potential mark to them.
In the movie A Clockwork Orange, the gang also believe they are above the law.
The first person that we see them attack is a homeless man who has been drinking.
At first, the gang only makes fun of the man's obvious inebriation.
He doesn't know that they're a threat or that he's in danger, but something in them was triggered to attack him.
The Droogs pounce on the homeless man and unleash their fury. And the worst part is, they do it just for fun.
I think that random acts of violence is very scary to anyone because that means it could be you, regardless of how you've lived your life. Really, anyone is up for grabs.
Sergeant's crew is ready for their first night of happy slapping, especially Chelsea.
Chelsea is the designated filmer of what goes on. She's got her phone at the ready. In A Clockwork Orange, Alex and his droogies patrolled looking for unsuspecting people to prey upon. The sergeant's crew did the same thing.
Similar to the film A Clockwork Orange, the group spots a homeless man and decides to make him their inaugural target.
The point of happy slapping is you're supposed to slap and leave the victim startled, shocked, and maybe even a little sore. This particular group of kids doesn't let it go at that. They keep hitting him. They beat him mercilessly.
Chelsea, they enjoy the act of slapping, humiliating, hurting their victims. They get to feel that they are invincible and they are in control and they have a great deal of power, so they don't stop.
Their attack, which seems to be ripped straight from the pages of A Clockwork Orange, becomes the first of many happy slappings they record. But filming the attacks isn't the only way Chelsea keeps the memories alive.
At an all-nighter.
Chelsea wrote all this in her diary, exactly how she felt about it, how good it made her feel to be a participant.
I kicked him. He looked so great. We all did.
In another entry, she writes about how the group banged up some old homeless man.
You should have known better than to mess with us.
She seems to enjoy reliving the experience as she writes it.
Her motivation was to hurt. Her motivation was to perpetuate violence.
It felt good to see someone fear me.
She took pride in it, and that's why she was writing them down.
As the weeks go by, Chelsea and her gang's attacks only get worse.
These kids together were a toxic, evil brew. They brought something out of one another that was violent and ugly and hungry. Chelsea loves her new friends. She feels like she belongs. She's accepted for the first time.
In A Clockwork Orange, Alex and his gang drive around town until they come across a house with their next victim inside.
When the droogs get into a home, it's generally by knocking on the door, and when someone answers the door, they ask if they can use their phone. Now they're inside, you've given permission, and that's when they generally will attack.
As depicted in the movie, Chelsea and Sergeant's crew come up with their own way to disarm a target.
The plan of attack is one of the sergeant's crew will ask a random person, "Do you have the time?" And when the person looks down and breaks their concentration for a moment, the crew will converge and beat the person looking at a watch. And they see someone unaware walking toward them. Chelsea is in her place as camera woman. So she's got her phone and she's ready to record whatever happens in front of her.
It may be the first attack of the night, but this copycat torture is far from the last.
He never saw it coming. Probably all he did was hear the crack, and everything went black.
Chelsea O'Mahony and her gang of vicious teenagers have a Friday night ritual of terrorizing innocent strangers. But like in the movie A Clockwork Orange, the more attacks they get away with, the more violent they become.
Friday night activities really essentially were going out and attacking people, causing as much damage that they could to individual innocent victims. Their activities are deplorable But in their minds, based on their damaged backgrounds, they're justifying their behaviors because they're so internally angry.
In the movie A Clockwork Orange, a diabolical gang of young men wander around their hometown, hunting for their next target.
The Droogs ventured the city at night with the sole purpose of attacking people for fun.
The controversial film is one of the most debated movies of all time because of its violent themes. Even the film's director, Stanley Kubrick, doesn't escape unscathed.
Kubrick had this movie pulled from theaters because of the amount of death threats that he was receiving for what this film was bringing out of people.
Now, Chelsea and her gang have found their next victim.
David Dobson was bartending late one night, and he was on his way home and just so happened to walk past Chelsea and Sergeant's crew.
Do you know what time it is?
They close in and punch and shove and beat him. Chelsea takes her phone and she's filming everything. She's not repulsed by the violence that her friends are inflicting on just a random human being.
Every blow to his body, every scream, every hit, every sock, every groan, she records. She enjoys this and she's laughing while she's recording it. So you're really toying with the individual like a cat and a mouse.
But almost as quickly as the group ambushed David Dobson, the fight is over.
David Dobson was the first victim on that horrific night. I think the crew stopped attacking David Dobson because he went down too easy. They liked to have somebody try to get back at them. They liked that confrontation. And here was just a lump on the ground.
After David is crumpled on the ground, beaten, bloodied, and just shocked by what's happened, Chelsea and Sergeant's crew leaves him.
When you're attacking people with such rage and with such violence, whether they live or die, it's very cocky, but they don't care. Well, their goal was to bully, just to assault society, to have a good time at someone else's expense. It's like terrorism, and they get a sense of enjoyment, empowerment, feeling that they're in control, feeling that they're invincible.
40 minutes after their first attack, Sergeant's crew is ready to strike again. And this time, they're looking for a challenge.
And they found what they were looking for in David Morley and Alistair Whiteside.
They are a challenge to this group because before they've only gone after lone individuals. Now they want to see, can we take two guys at one time?
Hey, guys.
Chelsea runs up to the group and points her camera at them and says, "We are doing a documentary on happy slapping, so pose for the camera."
She sticks her phone in their faces, recording, of course, and before they realize what's going on, the other three gang members are beating them and punching, hitting them, and so they never see it coming.
The two men never had a chance.
David Morley takes the worst beating. He is knocked down and still they're kicking at him, stomping on him, doing incredible damage to his body. Alistair was not beat as badly as David, but he couldn't get up off the ground. And he just had to lay there helplessly, watching his best friend be bludgeoned and battered and bruised. When the crew realized the men were unresponsive, they searched all their pockets and came up with a cell phone.
In A Clockwork Orange, Alex and his gang break into the house of an eccentric cat lady. It's one of the movie's most violent scenes.
Alex breaks into her house, and they only plan to rape and beat her, but the eccentric cat woman starts to defend herself, and then she's killed.
But instead of fear or remorse, Alex feels elated.
It's a hard scene for a lot of people to watch, just because of the fact that after he's killed her, Alex smiles looking down on this woman.
Comparable to Alex in the film, Chelsea understands the pure joy of watching someone suffer.
As everyone's ready to leave after pillaging the pockets of their two victims, Chelsea pulls her foot back and kicks David in the head with all the force she can muster.
Her state of mind is, I don't care. This is an object. This is no longer a human. This is just something that I can brutally attack and cause damage to.
Although Chelsea and Sergeant's crew have been at it all night, they aren't ready to call it quits just yet.
These kids want more. They are enjoying themselves, and they are feeling close to each other while they're doing it. There's nothing that's going to stop them until they are made to stop.
Just like in A Clockwork Orange, they were prowling the streets. They've been out all night attacking innocent citizens just like the Druids. They thought that they were unstoppable.
A dangerous gang of teenagers called Sergeant's Crew is on the prowl in their neighborhood, ready to attack their next victim. And it all might be due to the violent scenes showcased in the cult classic film A Clockwork Orange.
Chelsea and Sergeant's crew want to hurt people. They enjoy it. They're good at it. And there's nothing that can get in their way because they think they're unstoppable.
Chelsea has been out all night, attacking innocent people, going about their own business.
At one point, however, Chelsea decides that she's not happy to let the boys do all the dirty work. She wants to have her share too. Right before they leave to find another victim, Chelsea kicks David Morley in the head.
The brutality of Sergeant's Crew is eerily similar to the group of young terrorists in the cult classic A Clockwork Orange.
I would say for the group of young men in the film, the need to hurt people, it seems pretty strong. The attacks escalate from one to multiple attacks in a night.
When it comes to Alex and his gang of droogs, destroying people's lives is their passion.
Their confidence seems to grow if you look at how little they seem to care about killing someone or hiding their tracks or remaining anonymous. They just seem to operate as though they run the world.
In real life, Chelsea and her newfound friends also think they are above the law.
Sergeant's crew has already attacked multiple people, but in their minds, they're just getting started.
At this point, Sergeant's crew decides that they're going to try and beat up 3 men at once.
Reese stepped in to distract the 3 men to increase their element of surprise when they did attack.
They're prepared and they've coordinated this, and this is something that they are excelling at. They are becoming experts at doing this.
Sergeant's Crew is thrilled about their latest attack.
It proves to them that they are getting better. If they can attack not 1, but 2, but now 3, they are invincible.
With the feeling of absolute power, Sergeant's Crew decides to ambush yet another victim before ending the night.
They spot a homeless guy sleeping outside, a man who really has nothing. But they're gonna attack him anyway.
In the movie A Clockwork Orange, Alex and his gang come across a homeless man lying drunk in a tunnel.
With the homeless man, they began by making fun of him, and then in the next instant, they are beating him with their fists and weapons.
As in the movie, Chelsea and her gang surrounds the homeless man, Wayne Miller, and begin to poke fun at him.
Are you ready? What?
All of a sudden, he's being kicked, beaten. While Chelsea films everything, they continue to kick him over and over and over again in the head.
These kids were like a pack of wild animals. This was just senseless and brutal and unnecessary.
The attack on Wayne Miller seems to be pulled directly from the film A Clockwork Orange. At first, Wayne's attack seems like just another senseless beating at the hands of Chelsea and her gang, Sergeant's crew. But something is watching the gang's cold-blooded attack.
Chelsea is not aware that there's a security camera. It's filming from the building. It's catching every bit of Wayne's attack.
Chelsea feels invincible, impregnable. Nobody is going to stop her. But just like Alex in Clockwork Orange, at the moment you think you're in control, that's the moment that time is up.
Chelsea and her savage gang, Sergeant's crew, have brutally assaulted 8 people in the course of one night. Their most recent victim, a homeless man sleeping outside, is a copycat-like attack straight from the film A Clockwork Orange.
I think that randomness, random acts of violence, is very scary to anyone because that means it could be you, regardless of how you've lived your life.
Are you ready?
Really, anyone is up for grabs.
After they spent a night of beating up random people, the gang went and watched the cell phone video footage that they had recorded themselves of all the crime they'd done.
They're actively watching what they did with absolutely no remorse, no guilt, no empathy. So clearly, it's the enjoyment of what they are doing.
But while Chelsea and the boys, Reese, Darren, and David Blenman celebrate, one of their targets is in the hospital, fighting for his life.
David Morley was one of the early victims in the night. Not only did he get beaten within an inch of his life, when all the others had finished, Chelsea came up and kicked him in the head 3 times with as much force as she'd throw behind kicking a soccer ball.
She did this without any prompting from the group members. It's almost like saying, hey, look what I can do. Almost as a form of attention.
David Morley was able to make it through the attack. He was operated on, but unfortunately, he died after surgery.
Police immediately launch an investigation into the cause of David Morley's death, and before long, they begin to piece together a trail of terror.
Every victim has one thing in common, except for David Morley. Every other victim survived.
After each of their brutal beatings, many of the gang's victims report their assault to the police.
Most of the victims were able to go to the police, give statements, and allow police to figure out where this gang was operating and who they might have been.
And what's more, there's one thing tying all these attacks together.
Although it was smart of the crew to ask what time it was to distract the attention of their potential victims, it was rather ironic that that same technique effectively gave the police an accurate timeline of everything they did.
Police are able to retrace the exact steps Sergeant's crew took that night, But it's at the site of their last crime scene that delivers the most important piece of evidence. A security camera has recorded everything.
Police are able to discern that there is a girl who's filming these attacks, and that girl is carrying a blue bag.
Authorities know they're onto something. If they can find that blue bag, they'll have their killers. With a list for all their persons of interest, police begin their hunt.
They established a list of names and addresses, and as they were going to talk to these people, they saw Chelsea walking and carrying the same blue bag she had with her on the night of the attacks.
The police couldn't have asked for a better clue. There's probable cause in the fact that the female person in the video carrying a blue bag matches the description of Chelsea with her blue bag. And the address that they suspect that Chelsea was at.
In A Clockwork Orange, a gang of murderous teenagers roams the streets looking for people to assault.
When they meet the cat lady, it's supposed to just be another attack. But when she begins to defend herself, that's when she gets killed in the process.
In the movie, the cat lady's death leads to the eventual arrest of the gang's leader, Alex.
Alex eventually gets caught and placed in jail. I don't think that Alex or any of the Droogs would have stopped had things not played out as they did in the film.
Almost a week after the attack, Chelsea is also arrested for the murder of David Morley. In police custody, she immediately breaks down.
Chelsea was an open book.
He's dead, Chelsea.
She told them everything that went on, and her descriptions matched what the police already knew. So it was obvious that she was giving herself up and giving the rest of her crew.
Besides her confession, authorities are also able to obtain Chelsea's diary.
And listed there in her own handwriting was the details of the attacks they conducted, the people whose bodies they shattered.
Along with all the other evidence, including DNA and fingerprints from the scenes, police are able to arrest every member of Sargent's crew.
David, Darren, and Reese are all found guilty. They were sentenced to 12 years in prison. Chelsea was also found guilty of her role in the crime and was given 8 years.
In A Clockwork Orange, after Alex has served some time in prison, he is recruited for a new government rehabilitation project.
Alex is taken out of jail and sent to a psych hospital where he's basically being trained to become physically ill at the sight of violence or sexual imagery.
After completing the treatment, Alex is allowed to leave the hospital, a free man.
In theory, this rehabilitation treatment should prevent him from being able to continue with his violent behavior.
But in a surprising twist, Alex presumably returns to his evil ways. Off-screen, Chelsea serves her time and is eventually released.
We're hopeful that during this 8 years in prison, and possibly while she is now free, she is still seeing a therapist and seeking treatment, and has learned to deal with her anger in a more appropriate manner.
Perhaps the fear of going back to prison will make her curtail those kinds of activities. But if the bloodlust rises, her recourse will be violence.
Only time will tell.